Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fishin, the podcast where we discuss Magic's most mythic tribe and help the whole community become better Merfolk players. I'm Kody, one of the co-hosts of the show, and not Kody Smith on Twitter. And joining me today is my co-host, Dorian. How are you doing, Dorian?
Doing well. Hey, everyone.
Sweet. Where can we find you on the interwebs?
I can be found at Crinkle Biscuit on Twitter. My Facebook is private, so I don't let anyone on that.
He hasn't even added me as a friend yet, which is really awkward. But you could also find both of us on the Fishin and Merfolk Podcast Discord channel. You can find a pinned tweet at the top of our Twitter that has the address for that. So join us in talking about Magic and Merfolk specifically. You can also find us, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook is at FishCastMTG, as well as patreon.com/FishCastMTG. We tried to make it simple, for people to find us wherever you look. And then make sure to tell that friend of yours at the game store that, hey, you're the Merfolk guy at this store. I know about a Merfolk podcast and you should listen to it, and just give them our information, and that would be great. Also, rating us in your respective app stores is fantastic. And yeah, Ink Gaming, all that garbage. Go to Ink Gaming and use FishCast10 to get 10% off your purchase.
Ink Gaming is not garbage. We love you guys.
Yeah, no. I didn't mean to say that. It's just my parlance to just throw in garbage at some points. Ink Gaming is great. I like their playmats and their shirts. They're awesome.
Well, you got to stop throwing in garbage. All right, that's how the oceans. That's how the oceans are in their current problem right now.
Have you seen Aquaman?
Yes.
I think we need to just make an Aquaman trailer at some point, because Aquaman has come up so many times incidentally on the show. I don't.
Oh yes, is Matt still? He's now a reoccurring role in the next one, right?
Yeah, Aqualad, or Barnacle Boy.
I want to be called Barnacle Man.
I think Barnacle Boy would be better for Matt. We didn't get a new patron this week, but we still are very appreciative of our Patreon subscribers. You guys are great and awesome, especially in dealing with the reduced content. I guess I can say it now since I've actually been served papers and stuff. I'm going through a divorce, and I'm actually going to be moving here in the next couple weeks. So streaming is going to be on the lower end of my priorities right now. So I appreciate your patience and your continued support in this time of, like I said, reduced content. But we're gonna try and keep things spun back up, going into the fall. Again, just a really busy time, so yeah, I do apologize about all that. I picked the random Merfolk this time because I wanted to.
Yeah, there was no argument in that. It's just I'm picking it. It's okay.
Yeah, and I picked a real winner. Random Merfolk number 21, and this one is Wind Rider Patrol. This is from Battle for Zendikar. It's 3 blue for a Merfolk Wizard, and it is a 4/3 at uncommon. Did I say uncommon? It's an uncommon. It has flying, and whenever Wind Rider Patrol deals combat damage to a player, scry 2. And again, scrying is you look at the top 2 cards of your library, or you look at the top X cards of your library, in this case 2, and you can put any number of them on top or the bottom in any order.
This one in Battle for Zendikar Limited actually was pretty good. I was on the receiving end of this thing quite a few times, and if it survived any removal spell, you were more or less done. It was a quick clock, it had evasion, and it let you, set up your next draws.
Yeah, you can kind of get past lands. I mean, because especially in Limited, going past 5 is not always the best. Not saying that there aren't decks that are built to support that, and especially in this set, where you had giant Eldrazi's, it's so there were reasons to go above 5 mana, but 5 mana is generally a fairly good top end. And this is an evasive threat that can really, cut down your opponent's life total very quickly. Yeah, but I don't. This has no place in any other format than Battle for Zendikar Limited.
Yeah, I mean maybe casual, but
yeah, or like a Chaos Cube or something. Where you just bring any 3 packs. I think that would be interesting. But
oh yeah, no, this would easily be pickable in like a blue-white flyers for Chaos Draft.
oh yeah, no, it's definitely not terrible, but there are definitely much better Magic cards than Wind Rider Patrol. Sorry, Wind Rider Patrol. Yeah. So we're gonna just go right into our main topic because that was a disappointing card. We're talking about the Mythic Championships 4, I think it was.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna actually talk about something in a timely manner on this podcast, which is very odd for us. I say that as we started recording like 45 minutes after we got on Skype, but the tradition continues on. So I've got a few stats pulled up here, and Dorian has a few stats for the entire format. Or for the event, and we kind of wanted to discuss. We might not actually touch very much on Merfolk this week, but we're going to talk about the kind of overall metagame of how competitive Modern looks right now, and then at the end we'll kind of bring it around and talk a little bit about kind of where Merfolk lies, because Dorian, you had some news for me that I was not aware of at the beginning of this.
I am trying to remember what I said. Was it the Star City Games or something? I was talking about the stats.
It was about the stats, but we'll touch on that later. I have posted up here for day 1. I want to talk about the metagame, and these are the decks that the highest percentage decks. Basically everything above 1%. All right, so yeah, so for the metagame, there were some interesting stats for this if you weren't paying attention to the Mythic Championship in any fashion. And one of the biggest things, despite the banning of Bridge from Below, which we have discussed on the show in the past, Hogak was everywhere.
Oh yes, it was almost triple digits for this, which these things are a small scope of players to begin with, and I think we were looking at almost 1/3 playing Hogak.
Yeah, and so the list that they posted, that Magic posted, and I stole these data points from MTG Goldfish, but they have Hogak with 98 players at 21.4%, and they even have Hogak Dredge as a separate deck with 7 players at 1.5%. So, like you said, almost a fourth of the championship was Hogak lists.
Oh yeah, no, I'm looking at the my stats, trying to get like an add up of how many players there were with it, because yeah, like 1 in 5, like just over 1 in 5 people playing Hogak, and that is like the new version of the deck, not like the Dredge variant.
Yeah, well, I mean, they are slightly different, but I mean, for the purpose of just discussing the list, I think that they both kind of fall into that same pile of cards. They do run a good majority of the cards, and what's interesting about this, and the next card, or the next list that was right down below Hogak was Is It Phoenix with 48 players at 10.5%, which, looking at it from a competitive standpoint, like that's kind of where you would see like the most played deck in a format that, like Eldrazi Winter is another example of where there was one deck that kind of dominated everything, and you still didn't really ever see a deck go above 10%.
True. No, I think I'm trying to remember Eldrazi Winter. That didn't last that long.
No, I mean, because they banned I Have Ugin pretty quickly after that. But that finals for that Pro Tour there were 7 Eldrazi decks in the top 8, and one Affinity player.
Right.
So yeah, like it's just, and obviously not as many Hogak players. Well, a lot of Hogak players survived until day 2, but we only had one in the top 8. Is that correct?
Yes. Just one in the top 8. I was looking at the standings to see like my prediction. Let's see, all they got is the top 8 deck lists on this website. But I had made a prediction that it was going to be like 3 Hogak lists in the top 8 and I want to say like 6 in the top 16. So I've been trying to find where on the CFB websites that they talk about like how many lists or how many were in that top list, because there have been a few people talking about them.
Yeah, and what's funny is this, like, if you just looked at the top 8 of this event, you would not think that there were over 100 people playing Hogak. Like the top 8 was actually really good. There was a Hardened Scales, Eldrazi Tron, Urza Thopter Sword, which is the new combo with Urza Lord High Artificer. There's 2 Jund lists, a Mono Red Phoenix, a regular Tron, and then what's the last one? Did I miss? Oh, and then 1 Hogak list. So and what's funny is like it's kind of just crazy. I mean, I even have graphics from the metagame day 1. There were over 800 copies of Leyline of the Void. Over 800 on day 1. That is nuts. I mean,
and almost 750 Faithless Lootings, almost 500 Thought Seizes.
Yeah, and basically it's like you just look at this at the top cards. So to continue down, there's almost 500 Bloodghasts, almost 500 Lightning Bolts, just over 400 Hogaks. Just like almost 400. What is this card? I keep forgetting the name of it.
That is Stitcher Supplier.
Yeah, there's Stitcher Supplier, Vengevine. Just like it's nuts.
Just everything in the Hogak list is on this thing.
Yeah, and it's
with some cards coming in for Jund.
Yeah, we have Assassin's Trophy, and obviously Bolt is kind of more of a Jund staple. But, I mean, you could expect a card like Lightning Bolt to be kind of more widely played. But the most of these cards are just the Hogak list. And it's so crazy when Hogak players are mainboarding Leyline of the Void. Like they're like so basically game 2 and 3 is just or even game 1, your game can be decided in your opening hand.
Oh yeah.
Do you have a Leyline in play? Because if you take away your opponent's graveyard, then that's it. You got to move to game 2 basically. It's kind of just nuts, I think. One thing that I've just looking at this top list, and I think Tron took it down. Is that correct?
Yes, Tron ended up being the winner takes all for this. With some of the stuff that I've been reading on that, it's mainly because all the artifact removal got turned into Graveyard Hate, which just allowed Tron to steamroll its way into the finals.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, with just so much, there's so much value in Tron, and I'm kind of sad that Matt wasn't here to like just like do a few I told you so's.
Yeah.
But Tron just has so much value. I mean, it's like once you get an Oblivion Stone down, Hogak doesn't matter. It's just okay, cute. So it's just such a good deck. I do like a good Tron list. Again, and things like Wormcoil Engine, Walking Ballista, and you still have Ugin, still have Karn. You can just exile their Hogaks. Just you did all that work. Neat. Turn 3 Karn, exile it.
Yeah, that one goes away.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to do turn 4 Ugin, and now just get rid of the rest of your stuff.
Yep. Oh yeah, no, it's pretty. It's a fun deck. I mean, like in the Pauper event that I played when we gave away the box of I think that was Core 2020 and the Invocation that we gave away. I played Tron, and I ended up playing against a blue-black control list, and it was that list is such a complicated list that by the end it was like round 6, that dude was tired. And I was playing a deck that you just go, oh, this has 2 of my Tron pieces and a Sylvan Scrying. Okay, cool. This is fine. So it's a little bit different. It's almost an autopilot. Like it, especially against these Hogak lists and these Jund lists and Mono Red Phoenix. That there's just so many moving pieces.
Yep. Despite that, though, finally found the deck list. They don't have the standings for it, but they have all the decks that basically went 8 wins or better out of the 10 rounds of Modern. And of the 11 out of the, what was it? I want to say, I got to recount. 11 out of the 20 that win 8-1 or better in Modern, they all are Hogak.
Yeah, that's pretty just pretty remarkable. So going into day 2, what was the conversion on Hogak?
So looking at the day 2 standings with it, out of the 98 Hogak players, 70 of them ended up making it into day 2, making the day 2 metagame just under 25% of the remaining field.
Jeez. that's still nuts. Oh man. I just honestly, that's kind of part of the reason why I haven't been doing like any leagues on Magic Online, is like I'm just kind of waiting for this all to be over. I mean, Merfolk honestly doesn't have too bad of a game against Hogak because we have so much creature interaction. But I do want to pull up on our Twitter, Alex Kahn that was at SCG Connecticut. He did kind of he kind of echoed what we said last week about the force of negation, basically kind of forcing us to limit our non-creature spells to only deal with non-creature spells. So I mean, unless you're playing Deprive, you basically can't counter a Hogak. And you just have to deal with it with a Tidebinder Mage or Merfolk Trickster, Harbinger of the Tides in some fashion, and that can be a lot of work, if you just don't have the pieces.
Yep, I mean Tidebinder Mage is making a comeback in the main or in the sideboard and sometimes the main board because of Hogak.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you have this much. This many copies of Hogak in the main or in the events, and they also run Vengevines. They also it's just so much, like it just fortunately just deals with a lot of the problems that we have with Hogak. Because like the main deck graveyard hate doesn't really matter to us. We're not flashing things back or anything like that. So we actually kind of have a little bit of a head start in that fashion, in that we're not having to dedicate slots in our main board for hate pieces, if that makes sense, or like specific hate pieces. If Hogak is going to be this big of a deck, then we can get away with having 2 Tidebinder Mages, 2 to 4 Tidebinder Mages in the 75, and we're not giving up that much. Whereas like Hogak kind of has to keep in some number. They have to have Leyline of the Voids. They have to have enchantment removal.
Sometimes artifact removal, because you have people playing Grafdigger's Cage, Rest in Peace, Leyline of the Void, Surgical Extraction, Ravenous Trap.
Yeah, Martin Mueller, who played Hogak in the top 8, he has Lightning Axe, Lightning Axe and Assassin's Trophy in the main. But in the sideboard, there's a Nature's Claim, there's Engineered Explosives, which we've always kind of dealt with these graveyard decks. Engineered Explosives out of the side has always been something that, but like there's 2 main board Ladleline of the Voids in Hogak, and it's like we don't care, so they are definitely able to dig for things. They have a very complicated mana base with Blood Crypts, Bloodstained Mires, Overgrown Tombs, Stomping Ground. Like a lot of pain coming from their own lands, which definitely does help us. But yeah, it's an interesting problem that we have where our non-creature spells really do nothing against Hogak.
Oh yeah. Like the only thing I think we have in our arsenal right now is Grafdigger's Cage if we want like specific anti-graveyard hate.
That and
if we want specific graveyard hate, not anti-graveyard.
Yeah. I mean, we also have Relic of Progenitus as well, which, I mean, you're kind of forced into doing that if you're like me and you don't have your surgical extractions. You definitely have to be kind of okay, and those are artifacts, and the deck runs so many destroy target artifacts. There's a Shenanigans in the sideboard. They run they run Tormod's Crypt. I guess that doesn't matter for us. But just it's kind of crazy, and I mean they can run a Braid. They run a Braid. Kozilek's Return, it's just kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so what do you think about these other lists? We've mostly been talking about Hogak, and I think Mono Red Phoenix we have kind of a similar game against. It's definitely more oriented towards burn. The burn like. It's more like burn than a dedicated graveyard deck, but they do just get so much value out of Arclight Phoenix in the graveyard.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like the what is it? Finality of whatever the red finality is from War of the Spark. It's like skyrocketed it into being a much better deck than it used to be, because now you could do turn 1 turn 1 Lava Spike, turn 2 Lightning Bolt. And then on turn 3, you can basically, you can like turn 1 Faithless Looting, then turn 2 like Lightning Bolt, and then on turn 3 you can do like red, and 1 to basically recast those with the red finality, and any phoenixes you have in the graveyard are just coming straight back into play.
Yeah, that's just nuts. Like that is very crazy.
Had that happen to me in GP Dallas, and it was one in the Friday MCQ, and after they brought those creatures back into play, it was basically going into game 3 because I won the first game, and then in the GP for Saturday, I think I ended up playing. I switched into Echoing Truth. And all, but like the amount of burn that the guy had, even though I was able to like launch 3 of his phoenixes back to his hand, he just could ditch them back into the graveyard with the Faithless Looting that he had in hand, because he basically didn't have to flash back the one he had in the graveyard.
Yeah, and when you're in that position, one thing that I actually kind of was working on at the beginning of the year, or I guess last year, was running. What is that name of that card? Sword Point Diplomacy in Burn, because Sword Point Diplomacy is 2 and a black. You reveal the top 3 cards of your library, and your opponent can take 4 damage to have you discard that card, and then you draw the cards. Because the problem with Burn is that you run out of cards. And so, I'm not saying that Burn is a bad deck or anything like that, but one of the shortcomings is, I burned you out and I killed some of your creatures, but you were able to stabilize and you killed me. So like, my thought process was very similar to what Finale of Promise kind of offers, but Finale of Promise is just so much easier. You just like you said, you've got your lightning bolt, lava dart, gut shot, and then you have faithless looting, lava spike, light up the stage. So like you're just you're able to just reach so much farther. And then guess what? After you've done some faithless lootings, and you can just get some Arclight Phoenixes, which have haste and evasion, and yeah, it's just really hard to deal with.
Oh, without a doubt. That's and with the Mono Red Phoenix, for day one they had like 10 players, 6 of which made it into day 2. The one thing though, I got to give like a tiny shout out, like, so all the Boggles players made it into day 2.
That's pretty crazy. I guess.
Yep.
I guess technically it does okay because once you get enough pants on your Boggles, you can stand up to a Hogak.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny to think of a Boggle wearing like 12 pairs of pants and just like just saying no, like you can't pass.
Oh yeah, turn 1 Boggle, turn 2 Ethereal Armor, into Rancor, you swing for 5. With that, and then turn 3 you just Daybreak Coronet, and it's like, all right, come at me.
Yeah. Nice try. So actually, I was going to ask your opinion because there were actually 2 Jund lists that made it into the finals. What do you think about the power level of Ren and 6?
That card is a crazy power level. The ability to bring back fetch lands from your graveyard. No, okay. The ability to bring back fetch lands from your graveyard with Jund is a crazy value for them. I've played against Jund 2 times, and every time they were able to do like a turn 2 Ren and 6, they had a land drop to guarantee whatever the turn 3 play was going to be, usually Liliana the Veil.
Yeah.
Well, and then, they could, anything that's like an X1 is immediately dead with Ren and 6. So it forces us to rely a little bit more on Lords, but it's a good Planeswalker with it. So, I mean, I think this is one of the few cards out of Commander Masters that is making a change for other decks besides creating a whole new one with Hogak.
Yeah. And Ren and 6 is kind of like the power level is very nuts, like you described. You go turn 3. It's like you do turn 1, fatal push something, and then you
not even that. They their curve is basic, or their like perfect curve now is turn 1, hand disruption, turn 2 Ren and 6, turn 3 Liliana the Veil, and what can you do?
Yeah, I completely forgot about the Thoughtseizes and Inquisitions. So yeah, turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Ren and 6, turn 3 Lily, and they're tearing apart your hand, killing your creatures, and you're just done. Like, Ren and 6 also keeps Fatal Push online, which is also crazy for them to have, basically kill any Merfolk.
Yeah.
like that is very just a crazy power level card.
Easy way to just wipe our board. Fatal Push our Lord, kill, have Ren and 6 tick up to kill Master of Waves if you're still playing that, and then there goes your entire pressure.
Well, Ren and 6 can't kill.
Oh right, yeah, pro red. But
yeah, pro red. But I mean, you just go. You can just fatal push it. You Ren and 6, you return a land back to your hand, you fetch for a black source, fatal push it. Like it's or there's also just Kolagon's command is here. Lightning bolt, or lightning bolt I guess doesn't hit it, but just keeping our lords down, and just being able to have so much hand removal, creature removal. It's such a value deck, and this deck runs 23 lands, but really you could almost go down on lands, because like you said, you just get more fetches and you just get exactly what you need for that moment.
Oh yeah, I can kind of see Jund going down to 21, 22 lands if they want to, because of Ren and 6. At the same time, though, I mean, it makes the price of the deck has become way more, I want to say expensive because of it. Let's see what the new price is. Nope, not talking about it on this one. So, one thing I did notice is Reed Duke, the one who is like a, aficionado of Jund, decided to play Hogak in this Mythic Championship.
Well, I mean, basically up until Ren and 6, Jund, it's still a deck. It's like you always see it, but it wasn't making waves because Hogak was just dominating everything everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it still is. So there we go.
There we go. Jund is now back around the $2,000 range because of it.
Well, yeah, the mana base is so crazy. So there's actually, like I said, there's two lists. Ziyang Zhang plays a 23 land variant, and the other Jund player, David Mines, played 24 lands. He even played a Veraska Golgari Queen. That's the 4-mana one that has you just -3 to destroy a permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less.
Yep.
And that one even plays Bloodbraid Elf, Tireless Tracker, Scavenging Ooze. Like, there's so much ways to gain life, and just with Ren and 6 and Tireless Tracker, that's just value. You're just drawing cards. You're pulling out more lands out of your graveyard. You're cracking clues to draw cards. You can hit a Ren and 6 off Bloodbraid Elf.
Yeah.
Like, how is this?
Yeah.
How is this card good? Like, how is this not stopped? It's pretty nuts.
But I'm kind of happy to see like mid-range making kind of a comeback. Mid-range players have needed that kind of help for a little bit, considering how fast the format had become. So, and if Jund is, like the baseline of the format, then I think it's still kind of a good spot for us.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that we can't, overcome this, because as you've seen with a lot of the lists that have been popping up for Merfolk, we're actually very low on non-creature cards. So things like Inquisition of Kozilek, Thoughtseize are not as good. I guess that's kind of why more people were up on Inquisition of Kozilek. But I don't think we're in a bad spot, at least against Jund.
Yeah, it just takes some finagling. We got to basically look at the expected metagame we're going into with the way the last two, where is deck lists? There we go. So the way this is going, we have the top 3. Where is Hogak at? I do not see it. Is that a combo deck?
Yeah, it's I guess kind of creature.
I think
combo.
they grouped it. Yeah, they grouped it in with Dredge on MTG top 8. So, but I mean, the top decks right now is Arclight Phoenix, Eldrazi Tron, Hogak and Dreads, Urzatron, as always.
Yeah.
So for us, our deck, basically, we would need to plan around that type of expected metagame. War Prison, Urza Prison now, and is becoming pretty popular, and it is like almost right up there with Tron decks, at least in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I was also gonna point out the Urza Thopter Sword, because in kind of the same the bridge, the Whir decks, the Whir of Invention, Ensnaring Bridge lists are kind of like they're very similar. Obviously, Urza Thopter Sword is a little different, but those have been really helped by other Commander Masters cards like Urza and Goblin Engineer, which are kind of just super powerful cards, but generally a little slower than a lot of these lists.
Yes, if these decks start doing well, I'm gonna hate, having to fight against prison decks again, just because the way they are, for the most part. But what I'm seeing with Grixis Urza is something a little bit better list-wise compared to when we were fighting, basically fighting an uphill battle and losing to Lantern Control.
Yeah, I mean, you have a little bit better chances against like you said, the list that Manuel Lenz played in the top 8 is a Grixis list, and I mean, once you start getting into the combo pieces like Teferi Time Raveler, which really slows down a lot of the faster decks, obviously Urza Lord High Artificer is kind of nuts with how many artifacts this deck runs.
Yes.
and once, because like then you can basically just tutor for whatever you need for the moment. So Thopter Foundry, you could get the Foundry or the Sword. You can get the Ensnaring Bridge to stop things from going. And basically with the 1/1s that you get from Thopter Foundry, you can just with all of the eggs that this deck has, like Ichor Wellspring, Mind Stone, Nile Spellbomb, you're able to just kind of keep refilling your hand just enough so they can attack, and then just empty your hand again, and then your opponents can't attack.
Yep. No, with so if this deck starts doing pretty well, I could kind of see Hurkyl's Recall making a comeback, but I think we are okay keeping Echoing Truth against that, because if they try to swing out with a bunch of Thopters, the Thopter Foundry cannot sacrifice it. The one that you target, the only things that can deal with it would be the Goblin Engineer or Psi Master Thopterus.
Yeah, and the other problem with this with that is, I mean, Teferi, like baby Teferi, who has the basically each opponent can cast spells only at the time they could cast sorcery. And
yes, if they play like a version that runs him, yes, the list I'm looking at doesn't do that. Okay. The 4-color Urza, let me take a look at that one, does.
Yeah, the one that Manuel Lenz played in the top 8 did run 2 Teferi Time Ravelers. And like you said, in our case, we generally have, like you said, Hurkyl's Recall or Echoing Truth, which I'm kind of more a fan of Echoing Truth than I am of Hurkyl's Recall. But at the same time, Teferi really makes that difficult. It makes it really hard to deal with. So you might just be playing solitaire and just letting them play out their, it's like, no, play it out. Do you have anything else to say about the Thopter Sword decks?
Well, I'm a dirty combo player at heart, so I kind of like seeing that they're doing well. No, Merfolk is my. I see you face palming. No, Merfolk is my pride and joy. The love of my life. But there's still inner vices I need to do with combo.
It's fun, anyways.
I mean, I try not to do the combos that take 20 minutes to get going, because I used to play Jeskai Ascendancy, and then I was like, I'm not even having fun winning. No. So I ended up switching to the Bring to Light Scape Shift.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, Bring to Light is a fun Magic card.
Which was the sad thing, because the Snow Shift is the new quote-unquote version of Scape Shift decks. It's kind of like either a Bring to Light Snow Shift or Teamer Snow Shift, and the list that they've done so far, I got to go all the way back to day 2. They had 3 players in day 1, and none of them made it into day 2.
Oh, geez. I mean, there's still red green Valakut players, but it's there's the decks are just so fast.
Yes. No, but looking at it, looking at the types of cards we got for the day 1, if this is going to be any indication of what the modern metagame is going to start looking like going forward, we have Hogak, Is It Phoenix, being like the top 2 cards to maybe justify bringing in Tidebinder Mage, or to bring in more copies of Tidebinder Mage to like lock down certain pieces.
Mm-hmm.
No, then let's see what else we got. Humans, Eldrazi Tron. Well, so like Eldrazi Tron and the Thopter Sword being something to have ceremonious rejection, and then humans and Thopter Sword also being a reason to have Echoing Truth.
Yeah, Echoing Truth I think is just so versatile. To even kind of go against what Alex was saying, where basically our main board non-creature spells only handle non-creature spells. At least Echoing Truth hits anything we need it to, especially against these ensnaring bridge decks. It's very powerful. Against Hogak, it's very powerful. And I think the biggest offender, at least in Urza, Thopter Sword, is Teferi. Unfortunately, it's kind of it kind of shuts us off from being able to interact, which can be bad.
Oh yeah.
So the last 2 decks I want to go through here because we're kind of running against time here. The first one is Eldrazi Tron. We don't really need to say a whole lot about it because the deck it only changed a little bit with Karn the Great Creator. You basically just have a one of. I love the sideboard, at least from Sean Gifford. Basically, except for Leyline of the Void being a 4 of, the rest of the sideboard is all 1 ofs.
Yes, almost every single card in the sideboard was meant for a Karn wishing into the sideboard to bring into game, whatever game sits out. And all. With Eldrazi Tron, this one seems to be the deck that is able to utilize Karn the Great Creator a little bit better because you're applying early pressure and then you're playing, a turn 4 Karn to pretty much lock down your opponent. And if they can do like a turn 3 Thought Not See or turn 4 Karn the Great Creator, and then turn 5 they just lock you down with Mycosynth Lattice, that game's basically over.
Yeah, I mean, I've played against this deck a few times on MTGO. I mean, this has a lot of answers for a lot of things. And, Matter Reshaper is kind of nuts because, you could just flip Expedition Map, which is acceleration. You can flip a Chalice of the Void. So Chalice on 0 still does affect a lot of decks that are, that are running like Mox Opals and there's a few other cards that are not coming to mind right now. But even, so it's just such a good value deck. And like you said, once you get a Karn down, it's really hard to do anything. It's hard to do anything against it.
No.
Yeah.
Tropical Merfolk will love playing Collector Oof. Like in response to like a Karn the Great Creator, and because they can't really do anything other than dismember it or all is dust at that point. Like maybe Blast Zone with what I'm seeing in it, but if you time it right, you can essentially get the Collector Oofy in play. Like maybe bounce Karn while he's on the stack when they're casting casting Mycosynth Lattice. But that's like a very niche type of interaction. So,
and again,
if it comes up,
another area where Echoing Truth is very good.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's not really a whole lot else to say about it. We basically have the same problems with Eldrazi Tron as we did before, so I don't think there's any updates to make. But yeah, it's Eldrazi Tron.
Yes.
Plays big stompy boys.
Yep, they're either going to run you over with the Eldrazi or lock you out of the game and all. That's like the one thing I kind of don't like with the deck lists or with this new iteration of Eldrazi Tron. But it's still something that can be fought through, and it's a much more I would say it's a much more fair matchup than trying to face down 6 Hogak decks in a row.
Yeah, I'm sure playing in that was just a slog. Because I mean, with like we said, with almost a quarter of the matches or a quarter of the players being Hogak lists, like you can imagine that there were so many people that were playing just like you said, Hogak list after Hogak list, and that has to be just a mental slog.
Oh yeah. If we look at the anything with 7 wins and all, that number that I gave earlier, the 11, 11 out of 20, so out of 40, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 22 out of 40 that were like 7 wins with Hogak.
Yeah.
And then we still have like another 5 underneath that I didn't even get to count. So out of 45, it is like just over half were Hogak that was at the top tables.
Jeez. So. I mean, I actually was not able to watch very much of the coverage, but like I can just imagine them going like, oh, go to that table. It's not Hogak. It's something different, please. But the last deck that we can run through real quick was Hardened Scales, which is the new affinity hotness. We've talked about it on the show before. It's basically the only way that affinity has kind of stuck around. With Ancient Stirrings being able to just pull out any, you have so many targets with Ancient Stirrings, and
all but pretty much 7 cards. If you cast Ancient Stirrings, all but 7 cards are something you cannot pick, and that is Hardened Scales and other copies of Ancient Stirrings.
Yeah, Alvaro Fernandez Torres actually even played an Evolutionary Leap, but like that's only 9 cards out of the 60 that you are not missing with Ancient Stirrings. If you miss, I feel for you. That's rough.
Yeah. Oh, that is like the worst whiff ever.
Yeah, I mean, and there's just like animation module, and the deck is just so cheap, or like cheap in mana cost. You just dump your hand. Just Arcbound Ravager, Arcbound Worker, Dark.
Well, I mean, you could make the deck cheaper if you got rid of, Mox Opal and Inkmoth Nexus, and then you're looking at maybe a $300 deck instead of an $800.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it's still just a nuts, so fast deck.
Oh yeah,
it's really fast. It's really hard. I'd say that this is honestly a very hard matchup for Merfolk. At least it's been a hard matchup for me in the past. Just because it's like they can just go dump everything, put a bunch of counters on Walking Ballista, and kill everything.
Oh yes, I mean if not, just kill you. Like they attack out, and then after damage, they sack everything and just kill or take the rest of you out with Walking Ballista. However, Hardened Scales is a little bit of an easier matchup, I would say, versus Tropical Merfolk, just because we have Collector Ufi again.
Yeah.
Being able to vial that in response to, any of their activations. It's still going to trigger like animation module, but you shut down Arcbound Ravager, Walking Ballista, Hangerback Walker, Welding Jar, Throne of Geth.
Yeah, and this is a deck that again has just so many pieces that work very well together, and yeah, it's hard to it can be hard to deal with for sure. And then that's it. That's the top 8. And we kind of talked about all of the Merfolk matchups as we've gone along. So I hope that all of you at home were able to follow along at least a little bit. So I have to ask, you've been talking a lot about Swolfolk, lords.deck. Now, do you think that that's kind of like where we should be now? Or, I mean, I know Nikachu's been playing it a lot. It's kind of nuts that's where we're at.
Yeah. Considering the game plan with it's something where I'm kind of hesitant to say yes, because despite the Mythic Championship having a wide variety of both a limited metagame and then the top 8 turning into kind of like a wide variety of cards, I'm still not sure if it's something that we want to go completely faster with. But at the same time, if that's something that you are confident in taking into like your local metagame or taking into like kind of like a bigger tournament, say like a MCQ or like SCG Invitational qualifier, then I would kind of recommend it if you know that it's going to be like a faster format. If it's something that you feel that you can, still interact with and it's not somewhat slower, but a little bit more control oriented, like you have a little bit more Jund going around, then I could see sticking with mono blue.
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly say even against Jund with Ren and 6, it might be better to go, lords.deck, just to keep out of damage range.
That is true. Keeping out of damage range, because they will bring in like Plague Engineers against us, which is another, just anti-tribal hate, or just anti-tribal hate cards. So I do see the argument in that. With it, the thing I was kind of looking at is I'm trying not to base it solely off of the metagame that we see with the Mythic Championship.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. And your FNM is not going to look like this. Hopefully, if your FNM looks like this, then I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're playing with all the other spikes, and good luck.
Best wishes. We'll send our thoughts and prayers.
Yes. So, but that's the thing, though, is that Eldrazi Tron and Tron both have Blast Zone, so you have to kind of balance how many creatures are going to throw out against that. And if you're playing, the Swolfolk or, Simic Merfolk, you're having to deal with that kind of like balancing act, because you want to throw out as many creatures as you can just to close out the game quickly. But if you just play into like a Blast Zone, then game's over for you.
Yeah.
Let's see, the deck list that I'm looking at. This guy is Hamot Gale, if I hope I pronounced that right. He ended up taking down a European qualifier in Metz, France, with Swolfolk, only running 14 lords out of the total 16 he could do.
Only 14 lords?
Yes. But he gave a little bit more interaction. He kept he basically kept the spell, like the non-creature spell spread, 4 Force, 4 Spreading Seas, 4 Aether Vial, but then he main decked 2 Echoing Truth and then sideboarded another 2.
Yeah, that seems fine. And the only thing I could see being kind of a problem is if you have a lot of deck like the 2 Jund lists that run Inquisition of Kozilek and Thoughtseize and Liliana, you can find yourself running out of cards really quick if you're playing Force of Negation.
Oh yeah,
that's a word of caution. I think, and like I said, Alex Kahn was kind of complaining on Twitter, or not complaining, but just pointing out like maybe it's not as powerful as we think it is, or it's not the counterspell, that we needed.
I mean, a hand disruption like .deck is, is going to always be like a bad matchup for us, because now we're helping out their game plan by trying to counter a specific spell, and then we 2-for-1 ourselves.
Yeah, and of course, it being 3 mana doesn't help us with Inquisition of Kozilek, where they can just take it. So there's also that.
Mm-hmm.
So if we just had Force of Will, we'd be fine. We'd be in a lot better of a spot. But Force of Will is very powerful. I don't think they'd print that into Modern.
No, I think it would probably take maybe another 10 years before they even start considering Force of Will, and it depends on what the power creep looks like.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You gotta take into account all the, what's being played and all that fun stuff. So, you have news about where Merfolk stands in the Modern metagame.
Yes. So despite all the not really negative talk with Merfolk, but in the past 2 weeks, our percentage has gone up. We are now 2% of the metagame instead of 1%. And
Woo!
We have a total of 5 deck lists in the past 2 weeks. If we go in the past 2 months, we, kind of drop back down to the 1% range. But we have, 14 decks out of, 1,300. So I'm not going to complain too much about that. Going back to the 2 weeks, we do have, a quick shout out to Jonathan Aiken for making top 8 in the SCG Classic in Columbus. Good job on that.
Yep.
Well, and his list actually is kind of cool. He's it looks like he's trying to balance the like man lands with the canopy lands or horizon lands.
Yeah.
Well, because he has a total of 4 of the horizon lands, but then he's got like 4 Mutavault and 2 Fairy Conclave as a way to keep pressure on just against specific decks, and he has a Smuggler's Copter as well.
Smuggles.
Yes.
my buddy Snuggles. All right. Any last anything else that we should cover before we get out of here? Because we're pushing an hour.
No. I would probably say, once I've been seeing with the last couple decks, Damping Sphere showing up as like a 1 of or 2 of in Merfolk decks, it might be a good time to start, considering that as sideboard tech.
Yeah, for all these Faithless Looting, Manamorphose decks, and even Affinity, honestly, to just kind of really tax them and make it so that they can't quite get out to like a turn 2, turn 3, dominating board state. I could see that being a good addition.
Oh yes. No, despite my poor showing at SCG, or not SCG, at GP Dallas with running it, every single time I used it, it felt relevant, and that was against Izzet Phoenix, Tron. Never got to play against Storm, and I think I brought 1 in against the Hardened Scales Affinity, but just because I needed to swap in something, and it felt like the only thing that could kind of work.
Yeah,
but
I could see against all those matchups that card being very good.
Oh yeah. So I mean, considering that we have 2 versions of Tron in the top decks in the metagame, I think it's a good idea just to bring in, because it when I brought it in against like the Eldrazi Tron, they were forced to tap out to play a Wormcoil engine that I think they sided in.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it was a regular Tron that I was playing, that they were forced to tap out for Wormcoil engine, and then I was just able to bounce it between Mirror Bergiri and Harbinger of the Tides.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Harbinger's been putting in work recently. I've been really impressed with it.
Yes. So, if I have time in this week, since I am, currently on the job hunt, for those who are interested in my personal life, I'll try to build a deck based on, some of the recommendations I had, see how well it does in a league, and maybe next week I can, I will have an idea of how well that deck can do going forward, at least for mono blue. I'll try, if I can, I'll try both mono blue and blue green.
Oh, sweet. That'd be cool to. I'd be happy to hear your results. Maybe we could figure out a way for you to pop those on YouTube as well. But yeah, if you make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook is at FishcastMTG. If you have a longer form question, you can feel free to email us at fishcastmtg@gmail.com. Our cover art was made by Tessa and Hunter Pruitt, and our logo and stream art was done by Ishton on Twitter, with our animated intro by the amazing Jake Boss MTG on Twitter. If you like what we're doing here, please rate and subscribe in the Apple or Google Play podcast app stores, as well as find us on Patreon at patreon.com/fishcastmtg. Thank you all very much for your time, and we will see you next week.
Bye.